Now we are going to check the question. So the question is, explain the factors that might make the price elasticity of demand for a good highly inelastic. Okay. So we have to check the conditions, right? What are the factors that make the price elasticity of demand for a good that is highly inelastic? Okay. So, what is the price elasticity of demand? What is the equation for price elasticity of demand? So the price elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Right. So based on this value, we have different type of price elasticity of demand. Right. We have perfectly elastic, we have perfectly inelastic, we have elastic, inelastic, and we have unitary elastic. So here we have to consider highly inelastic, right? So price elasticity of demand is highly inelastic when a change in price leads to a very small change in quantity demanded, right? So even though the price has changed much, the change in price is a much bigger thing, but the quantity demanded haven't changed much. Okay, so the change in quantity demanded is very small. That is the case when the good have a highly inelastic dip. So let's see what are the conditions for that. So first thing is lack of close substitute. Okay, so what are substitute? Instead of one, we can consume the other one. For example, we have tea and coffee, right? So when the price of tea increases, we can go with coffee, right? So like that. And what if we have only tea available? There is no coffee at all. So if you are if you wanted to purchase it, you don't have any other option. You have to go with tea only, right? So that is the case. So when there are few or no alternative, consumer cannot switch to other good. Okay, consumer cannot switch to other good. So the demand remains unchanged even when the price is priced. Okay. So we can take the case of life-saving drugs. For example, life-saving drugs for cancer or any other diseases. So we don't have any other options available. Okay, that particular drug can only cure you. So no matter how the price has increased, you will have to go with that. Okay, so this is the diagram for inelasticity of demand. Okay, so let's see the how the change occurs. Okay, so initially let's take the case that the price is P2. Okay, let's take the case where price was P2 and the quantity demanded was Q2. Okay, and the price has increased to P1. Okay. See, the change is very small compared to the change in price. Okay. That is why the product has inelastic. Okay. So then the necessity of the good. If this good is important or not. So goods that are essential for survival or daily living. For example, we have staples or the daily food necessity things, right? So we can't completely ignore them even if the price has swung. So they have inelastic demand because consumers must continue buying them. So even though the food price goes up, you can't completely ignore them, right? The consumption will reduce by a little percentage compared to the increase in the price. Okay. So like basic food, water, electricity, etc. And you can even take the case of like mobile recharges nowadays. Okay, because like whenever the initially in India we can see the case of plans introduced by Jio, Airtel, etc. Initially they were providing it for like 150 rupees, maybe 200 rupees, 199, etc. Now they have increased that to like 200, 250, 300, 350, 349, etc. So when it is a necessity thing for you nowadays, like the students need internet for studying or uh, we have to do a lot of work, everything. It requires internet connection, right? So we can't just completely ignore them. And we can't just substitute with something else also, right? So we'll have to use that. Even though the consumption reduces a little bit, it won't be completely avoided. Okay, we can't do that. And then small proportion of income. Small proportion of income. So if a good represent a small share of income, consumers are less sensitive to the price changes like salt or newspapers. For example, if the price of salt increases from 20 rupees per kg to 25 rupees per kg. So we are not using salt that much, right? We might be buying a 1 kg salt for 6 months or 7 months like that. So we are not bothered about that. If the product is taking only a small portion of your income, a small change in the price won't be bothering the consumers. Okay. And next thing is habit forming or addictive goods. What is habit forming or addictive goods? So you know the alcohol, cigarettes, etc. Right? They are a kind of addiction thing, right? The drugs, etc. So no matter how the price increases, still those people who were already addicted will buy that. Okay, no matter how the prices are increased. So that's why even the government is imposing a lot of taxes to increase the price of these addictive goods. People are still buying. So for goods that create addiction or strong habits, okay, addiction or strong habits, consumers continue purchasing despite the price increases. For example, you can take the case of cigarettes and alcohol. Okay. Then short time period. So in the short run, consumers cannot easily adjust their behaviors or find substitute, making demand more inelastic. So in a short time, it is not possible. The effect will can only be seen in a long term. Okay, so if the period is very short run, people won't be getting enough time to adjust with the change. Okay, and in the long run, the demand may become more elastic. Anything. Okay, for example, like we were like used to go through. You were used to using cars to go to office or schools, etc. And suddenly the petrol prices went up. So from the next day onwards, you are not going to avoid your car and using public transport, right? But in the long run, you can't afford it. Like you can't afford the refill, so that you might gradually change, but the change won't be all of a sudden. Okay. Then we have the lack of information. So what do you mean by lack of information? So in the market, we don't have full information, right? That is not possible. So if consumers are unaware of price changes or alternatives, they will not, right? They will not adjust their demand significantly, right? Clear? So they will not adjust their demand significantly. So joint, that is the lack of information. So basically, the market in the market we don't have the perfect information about the price changes or alternatives, etc. So it will also have an impact on this. Okay, so we can't just suddenly change our demand pattern. And then joint demand and the complementary goods. So goods that are used together with the other necessary goods. For example, what are like complementary goods like bread and butter and car petrol for cars, diesel for cars, etc. So without one good, other good is we can't use that, right? Or it's like not that much useful. Okay, so good that are used together with the other necessary goods tend to have inelastic demand. So even if the price of one increases, we can completely ignore the okay. So example, petrol for cars. So even though the petrol prices has increased, we can completely ignore cars, right? Like and then durability of the good. Okay. And like there will be durable and non-durable goods, right? So non-durable goods that are used quickly, right, tend to have inelastic demand since they must be repurchased frequently. For example, food items. Okay. So even though the food prices has increases, but we'll have to buy it again and again, right? There is no other option. We can't just live on water and air, right? So definitely we'll buy it. And definition of the market. Okay. What was definition of the market? So a broadly defined good, like food. Okay. So has more inelastic demand than a narrowly defined one, that is an ice cream. So you can live without an ice cream. That is not a problem, right? We have a lot of substitute for that. So because the substitutes within the category are limited. So for food, we don't have any other option, right? But for ice cream and all, that is not much needed. Okay, so the food is inelastic. And demand is highly inelastic when the consumers are unable or unwilling to change the consumption. That is why the good is becoming inelastic. Okay, so the consumers are not unable or unwilling to change the consumption, mainly due to necessity, lack of substitutes, habits, or time constraints. So this is why some goods remaining remained as the inelastic. Okay.